Hey guys, tonight we are travelling back to a time when beauty was not just skin deep, it was bone deep, and often deadly. Imagine for a moment that you are not in your warm, comfortable bed, but in a cold stone chamber. The only light is the flickering dance of a few beeswax candles, casting long, wavering shadows across the tapestries that hang on the walls. These heavy weavings of wool and silk are not just for decoration. They are a necessary barrier against the perpetual seeping dampness of the castle walls. You can smell their faint, dusty scent, mingled with the sweet aroma of the burning wax and the cool, earthy smell of the stone itself. In your hands you hold not a phone, but a small, heavy mirror of polished silver. Its reflection is a little darker, a little more mysterious than you're used to, a soft focus version of yourself staring back from its depths. You lean closer, ready to begin the long and arduous process of preparing your face for the day. Let's be honest, if you were dropped into a high society boudoir with a medieval cosmetic kit, you probably wouldn't survive the application process, let alone the week. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It's always so wonderful to see where you're all listening from, so feel free to post your city and the local time in the comments below. It creates a nice sense of our little global community, all settling down together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your gaze in the silver mirror is critical, your inspection slow and meticulous. The most important, the absolute foundational element of beauty you must achieve, is an unearthly pallor. Your skin must be as white as snow, as luminous as a pearl, as untouched as the freshly fallen frost on a winter morning. This isn't just a preference. It is the most powerful status symbol you can possess, a silent declaration of your place in the world. A tanned, ruddy, or weathered complexion speaks of a life spent toiling in the fields, exposed to the harsh sun, a life of peasantry. A brown face is a working face, but your skin must broadcast a clear and undeniable message to everyone you meet. You do not labor. You are a creature of the indoors, of castles and courts, a life of leisure and refinement. This ideal goes beyond simple class distinction. It's woven into the very fabric of social and moral belief. Your body, as a noblewoman, is seen as a precious enclosed garden, a hortus conclusus. It must be protected from the wild, vulgar elements of the outside world. A pale complexion is physical proof of this seclusion and purity. It suggests a delicate, fragile constitution that requires protection, a highly desirable trait in a potential wife for a powerful man. Your pallor signifies that you are an object of value, to be cherished and kept safe within the castle walls. To maintain this, noble women would go to incredible lengths to avoid any hint of colour, staying indoors during the brightest hours, carrying parasols or wearing wide-brimmed hats and gauzy veils if they absolutely had to venture into a courtyard or garden. To help nature along, you have a small, beautifully carved ivory pot on your dressing table. You unscrew the lid, and the scent that wafts out is sharp, a little sour, like vinegar, with a faint metallic undertone that catches in the back of your throat. Inside is a thick, startlingly white paste. This is your secret weapon. This is Venetian ceruse, also known by the rather ominous name Spirits of Saturn. It's the absolute height of cosmetic technology, imported at great expense from Venice, the epicenter of luxury goods. You dip your fingers into the pot. The paste feels cool and surprisingly heavy, slightly gritty beneath your fingertips. You begin the slow, methodical process of applying it to your face, your neck, and your décolletage. It's less of a foundation and more of a personal lead-based paint job, guaranteed to give you a glow. Though perhaps not the healthy kind. The key ingredient, of course, is white lead carbonate. The process to create it was a well-known, if noxious, procedure. Sheets of lead were unrolled and hung over pots of vinegar, and the whole arrangement was buried under a mound of decomposing horse manure. The heat from the manure and the acidic fumes from the vinegar would work together over several weeks to corrode the surface of the lead, forming a crust of white powder. This powder was then scraped off, ground into a fine dust, and mixed with a binder, often egg whites or more vinegar, to create the coveted paste. You know there are other, safer whiteners. You could use a paste made from finely sifted wheat flour or ground lily root. But those are for women of lesser means. They are chalky, they flake easily, and they lack the luminous, almost translucent quality of ceruse. Only ceruse gives you that perfect pearlescent finish, a smooth, opaque, and utterly flawless white mask. You spread it carefully, working it into every pore, every tiny line. It takes skill to avoid streaks, to create an even surface that doesn't look like a cheap plaster wall. You must be careful not to get it in your mouth, of course, though a faint metallic taste now seems to permanently linger on your tongue. And you must try not to sweat, as beads of perspiration could create little rivulets in your perfect facade. Smiling. Well, smiling is generally discouraged anyway. Not because of medieval stoicism, but because the slightest facial expression risks cracking the expensive, carefully applied veneer on your face, revealing the imperfect, living human skin beneath. You wear this mask of lead for days, sometimes even weeks at a time, simply patching up any cracks that appear. Removing it is an ordeal in itself, involving a harsh mixture of mercury, breadcrumbs, and honey, scrubbed vigorously against your delicate skin. Of course, no one truly understands the precise nature of the poison. They are so diligently slathering onto their bodies, but they see the effects. You see them. Over time, the ceruse eats away at the skin it's meant to beautify, causing blemishes, inflammation, and scarring. The cruel irony is that the more damaged your skin becomes, the more ceruse you need to cover it, creating a vicious, destructive cycle. The lead is slowly, silently absorbed into your body. You notice your hair seems thinner in your brush each morning. Your gums feel tender and sometimes bleed when you chew. And at night, you are sometimes woken by sharp pains in your stomach. It is the price of beauty, a slow-burning sacrifice made at the altar of fashion. Once your pearlescent mask is complete, your gaze in the polished silver drifts upward, up past your eyes, past where your eyebrows used to be, to the true centerpiece of your face, your forehead. In this era, a beautiful forehead is not just a forehead. It is a high, vast, luminous dome. It should be as smooth and round as an egg, signifying intelligence, purity, and a noble lineage. To achieve this, you have spent countless hours in a painful ritual of modification. You take up a small pair of bronze tweezers. Starting at your natural hairline, you have painstakingly plucked away every single hair, one by one, for at least an inch, sometimes 2 or even 3 inches, all the way up your scalp. The goal is to create the illusion that your face is longer, more elegant, and that your forehead dominates your features. Some women, tired of the endless plucking, would turn to harsh, depilatory salves, caustic concoctions of arsenic and quicklime that would burn the hair away, often taking a layer of skin with it. But you don't stop at the hairline. Your eyebrows have also been sacrificed for this ideal. They are plucked into near non-existence, maybe leaving just the faintest, thinnest, highest arch, a mere whisper of a line far above your eye. Some of the most fashionable women of the court have gone even further, plucking their eyelashes as well, creating a wide-eyed, slightly alien look that is considered the height of sophistication. This aesthetic wasn't born in a vacuum. It mirrored the art of the day. Religious icons, particularly depictions of the Virgin Mary, often showed her with this same high, serene brow, lending the fashion a subtle air of piety and otherworldly grace. You gently touch the high, smooth curve of your forehead, now gleaming white under its layer of ceruse. It feels alien, but correct. It looks like the faces of the serene ladies you see in portraits and illuminated manuscripts. Of course, there is a question here that lingers in the minds of those who look back. Historians still argue whether the exaggeratedly high foreheads seen in portraits by artists like Jan van Eyck were a true reflection of daily fashion for all noble women, or an artistic ideal, a kind of medieval Photoshop used to emphasize the subject's purity and intellectual grace. The truth, as it so often is, likely lies somewhere in between, a persistent and popular fashion, perhaps amplified and perfected by the artist's brush. For you, however, sitting in this quiet, candlelit room, it is not an abstract debate. It is the simple, painful and poisonous reality of what it takes to be beautiful. Your stark white face is a perfect, luminous canvas, but a canvas that is purely white can feel cold, lifeless, a spectral image in the wavering candlelight. The goal is not to look like a ghost, at least not entirely, but rather a creature of such supreme health and delicate breeding that a natural, youthful flush permanently graces your cheeks and lips. The key word, however, is natural. Heavy, obvious colour is considered utterly vulgar, the mark of a common woman or a lady of the night. Your blush must be a secret between you and your mirror, a whisper of colour so subtle that people believe it is simply the evidence of your own modesty and pure blood. There will be no compacts of pressed powder, no vibrant rouge. Your methods are far more organic and far more discreet. You turn to another small pot, this one made of simple, unglazed clay. Inside there isn't a powder, but a thick, reddish paste that smells faintly of dried herbs and sweet wine. You dip the very tip of your finger into it and rub a small amount onto the back of your hand. It leaves behind a sheer, rosy stain, melting into your skin. This concoction is likely made from alkanet root, a plant prized for its ability to produce a beautiful red dye. The root has been steeped in oil or alcohol to draw out its colour, then mixed into a paste with a little beeswax to give it substance. On other days, when you desire an even more transient stain, you might just use what nature provides directly. You could take a single, perfectly ripe wild strawberry or a dark mulberry, crush it between your fingers, and use the juice to bring a hint of life to your face. The dregs from a cup of strong red wine could also do the trick, staining your lips with a deep, temporary claret. This is the original no makeup look, a trend you thought was invented by Instagram influencers, but which has existed for centuries. The only difference is that your version is achieved not with tinted moisturizer, but with the contents of a garden or a wine cellar. You begin the application. With the stained tip of your finger, you pat the colour gently onto your lips, not coating them in a thick layer like a modern lipstick, but pressing the colour into them until they look naturally bitten, as if you've just been lost in a moment of deep thought, The colour is meant to be part of you, not something sitting on top of your skin. It should look like your blood is closer to the surface there, a sign of vitality. Then you turn to your cheeks. You find the very top of your cheekbone, the apple of your cheek, and you dab the faintest amount of the same stain there, blending it out carefully with your fingertips until it vanishes into the white ceruse. There should be no discernible edge, no obvious sign of artifice. It should simply look like a demure, girlish blush, the kind that might appear if a handsome knight paid you a compliment at court. It's a carefully constructed illusion of effortless natural beauty layered right on top of that very unnatural and toxic mask of lead you so painstakingly applied earlier. The contrast is something you don't think about. You simply accept it. One poison to create the canvas, one gentle herb to bring it to life. Now, with your skin perfected and your blush subtly applied, you focus on your eyes. Framed by that high, plucked hairline and your nearly invisible brows, they are already prominent. But they can be more. They can be captivating, enchanting, windows to a soul so deep and mysterious that men will lose themselves in your gaze. For this, you reach for a tiny, dark glass vial, no bigger than your thumb. It is filled with a dark, watery liquid. This is your most dangerous and most powerful tool. This is belladonna. The name itself, from the Italian belladonna, means beautiful woman, a direct and honest advertisement for its intended purpose. The liquid is an extract from the Atropa belladonna plant, more commonly known as deadly nightshade. You know it is poison. Everyone knows it is poison. Children are warned away from its glossy black berries in the woods, but in carefully controlled, minute doses, it has a remarkable effect. You unstop the vial and dip the very tip of a clean feather into the liquid. Leaning close to your silver mirror, you hold your breath and steady your hand. You let a single tiny drop fall directly into your eye. It stings for a moment, a sharp, cold shock that makes your eye water. You blink rapidly and then repeat the process on the other side. Slowly, over the next few minutes, the magic begins. The belladonna works by blocking the receptors in the muscles of your iris that are responsible for constriction. Your pupils, freed from their tethers, begin to expand, swallowing the colourful part of your eye until your irises are just a thin ring around a vast, black pool. The effect is dramatic. Your eyes now look dark, luminous, and impossibly deep. It is a look of perpetual surprise and wide-eyed interest, a gaze that seems to drink in the world and invite deep connection. There is a physiological reason this is considered attractive. It mimics the natural dilation of the pupils that occurs when you look at something or someone you desire. Your eyes now send a constant, silent signal of adoration and fascination. But this captivating gaze comes at a steep price. The most immediate side effect is that your vision becomes incredibly blurry. Anything closer than a few feet dissolves into a soft, indistinct haze. You can no longer focus on fine details and reading would be impossible. It's like the world has been permanently set to a camera's portrait mode, with only the distant background in focus. Bright light becomes physically painful, sending daggers of pain into your head. And of course, there is the ever-present risk of using a deadly poison. A drop too many, a slightly more potent batch of the extract, and the effects could spiral from blurry vision to a racing heart, complete disorientation, and worse. Historians and medical scholars debate how common this practice truly was, whether it was a daily ritual for the truly dedicated, or a literary trope symbolizing vanity's dangers. but the recipes persist in period texts, a testament to the fact that for some, the allure of enchanting eyes was worth the risk of stumbling blindly and foolishly through a candlelit hall. With your vision now softly blurred and your eyes like dark pools, you assess the area around them. Your eyebrows, as we established, are long gone, plucked into oblivion. For many women, this is the finished look, but for a truly special occasion, you might want to add back a little definition. Not where your brows used to be, of course, that would be far too low and brutish. Instead, you will paint a delicate, thin arch much higher up on your forehead, halfway to your new, plucked hairline. You might use a fine brush dipped in a dark powder made from ground charcoal or antimony. But for the most luxurious and, let's be honest, slightly unsettling option, you turn to another resource: mouse fur. On your dressing table is a tiny square of parchment, and on it are two perfectly shaped, impossibly delicate eyebrows. They have been crafted from the soft, fine pelt of a mouse, carefully cut and shaped into graceful sweeping arches. You use a little fish glue or gum arabic as an adhesive, dabbing it onto your skin high above your natural brow bone. Then, with your tweezers, you carefully lift the tiny fur arches and press them into place. It's a far cry from modern microblading, and perhaps a bit more micro-row-blading, if you will. But the effect, from a distance and in the dim light, is surprisingly convincing. It frames your face, enhances the height of your forehead, and adds a final touch of deliberate, almost surreal artistry to your appearance. You now look less like a simple human and more like a creature from a painting or a poem. Your face a testament to wealth, leisure, and a dedication to beauty that borders on the fanatical. With your face now a perfect pale and subtly flushed mask, your attention turns to your hair. Your relationship with your hair is complicated. It is considered one of a woman's greatest glories, a symbol of her vitality and allure. Poets write sonnets about silken tresses and golden locks that trap the sun. Yet, for a respectable married woman like yourself, this crowning glory must almost always be hidden from public view. The Church is quite clear on this matter. A woman's uncovered hair is a temptation, a snare for the eyes of men, an invitation to sin. St. Paul's injunctions echo through the sermons you hear every Sunday. Once you are wed, your hair belongs to your husband and to God. To display it freely would be an act of impropriety, even shame. So you begin the elaborate process of containing it. You sit at your dressing table and your maid begins to brush out your long hair with a comb made of carved boxwood or ivory. Then the braiding begins. This is not a simple plait down your back. Your hair is parted meticulously in the center and woven into two tight, complex braids. These are not meant to be seen, they are structural. They are the foundation upon which everything else will be built. The braids are then coiled and pinned flat against the sides of your head, or looped over your ears in a style sometimes called ear muffs, which is a far less elegant name than the look implies. The goal is to create a smooth, controlled shape to completely contain the wildness of your loose hair. Over this tightly bound foundation, you place a series of coverings. First, a simple linen coif, a close-fitting cap that ties under your chin, ensuring not a single wisp can escape. Then, over that, comes the wimple, a large piece of cloth, usually fine linen or silk for a lady of your status, that is draped around your neck, throat and chin, and pinned securely to the coif on either side of your face. Finally, a veil is arranged over the entire construction, its fabric falling gracefully over your head and shoulders. The result is a complete framing of your face. All that is visible to the world is the pale oval you so carefully prepared. from your high, plucked forehead down to your swaddled chin. It's a look of profound modesty and piety. It also conveniently hides any evidence of the lead-induced hair loss you might be experiencing from your favorite foundation. A real win-win if you don't think about it too hard. But just because your hair is hidden doesn't mean you don't care what it looks like. For your husband, for private moments, and for your own sense of self, its appearance is paramount. Itchy, and the most fashionable, most desirable hair color of all is blonde. Golden, shining, sun-kissed hair is associated with youth, angels, and the heroines of romance tales. If you are not blessed by nature with this coveted shade, you are not without options. You simply have to be willing to engage in a bit of kitchen chemistry. You would prepare a potent bleaching agent. A common and particularly effective recipe involved a harsh lye solution. You would take wood ash, preferably from a beech or oak fire, and boil it in water to create a caustic liquid. To this, you might add other ingredients like celandine flowers or saffron for a golden tint, or even less savory things like sulfur or alum. You would then take this mixture out into a private, sunlit courtyard, a place where you could be unseen. You would wear a special wide-brimmed hat with the crown cut out, known as a solana. You would pull your hair through the central hole, letting it fan out over the brim of the hat, while your face and neck remained shaded below. Then you would carefully paint the lye solution onto your hair and sit in the hot sun for hours, letting the combined power of the caustic chemicals and the UV rays strip the color from your strands. The process was smelly, damaging, and could easily result in chemical burns on your scalp if you weren't careful. But if you were successful, you would have the pale golden hair of a storybook princess. Once your hair is the correct color, keeping it clean is another challenge. You don't have bottled shampoo, of course. The most common cleansing agent is, once again, a lye-based soap. It's effective at cutting through grease and dirt, but it's also incredibly harsh, stripping your hair of all its natural oils and leaving it brittle and dry. To counteract this, and to add a beautiful scent, you perform a second step, a fragrant rinse. After washing, you would pour a prepared infusion through your hair. This could be water that has been boiled with rosemary, which was thought to promote hair growth, or with chamomile and rose petals for a soft, sweet scent. A rinse of wine or vinegar was also popular, used to restore, shine, and balance the pH of your hair after the alkaline soap. It's a surprisingly sophisticated two-step process of clarifying and conditioning. Beyond simple cleaning, there are countless folk remedies and recipes for hair care, a testament to its importance. One particularly quirky tidbit found in medieval manuscripts is the belief that incinerated hedgehog ashes, when mixed with bear grease, could cure baldness. It's the kind of thing that makes you wonder who the first person was to look at a hedgehog and think, you know what? I bet if I set that spiky fellow on fire and rubbed him on my head, my hair would grow back. Historians can't confirm if this was a widely accepted treatment or just one very strange idea recorded for posterity, but it shows the level of desperation and creativity that went into hair care. For you, however, sitting with your hair now properly hidden beneath layers of linen and silk, these treatments are a private matter. Your public presentation is one of chaste concealment. Only in the privacy of your chambers, with the veils and wimples set aside, would the true color and condition of your hair be revealed. This created a fascinating duality in the life of a medieval noblewoman. The public image of severe modesty and the private reality of painstaking and sometimes dangerous cosmetic enhancement. Your hidden hair, bleached and scented, is a secret you carry with you. a small act of personal vanity tucked away beneath a public performance of piety. With your face and hair attended to, your thoughts turn to the rest of your body, to the concepts of cleanliness and scent. You have probably heard the persistent rumor that people in medieval times were filthy, that they went months or even years without bathing, and that the world was shrouded in a permanent cloud of grime and body odor. While hygiene standards were certainly different from our modern, sterile expectations, this popular image is a wild exaggeration. In reality, bathing was a recognized part of life, valued for both health and pleasure. You don't live in fear of water, you just approach it differently. Your castle has a dedicated bath, likely a portable wooden tub, similar to a large barrel, that can be brought into your private chamber and placed near the fireplace for warmth. Servants haul endless buckets of water heated over the fire to fill it. It's a labor-intensive process, which is why a full immersion bath isn't a daily occurrence for anyone, not even nobility, but it is a regular one, something to be enjoyed perhaps once a week or more frequently if a special occasion calls for it. For daily hygiene, you rely on a simple basin of water, a cloth and a block of soap. You perform a sponge bath, washing your face, hands, underarms and other key areas every morning. This was the standard for day-to-day cleanliness. But tonight, you are indulging in the luxury of a full bath. As the steam begins to fill the room, softening the harsh stone walls and casting a warm, moist glow, you notice the scent is not just of hot water. Your maids have added things to the tub. This is not just about getting clean. It is about creating a sensory experience. They have scattered handfuls of fragrant herbs and flowers into the steaming water. Lavender for its calming properties, chamomile to soften the skin, and fragrant rose petals that float on the surface like tiny pink boats. The water becomes a giant pot of herbal tea, and you are about to become the tea bag. This practice was incredibly common. Bathing was an opportunity to perfume the skin, and different herbs were believed to have different medicinal properties, capable of soothing aches, calming the nerves, or invigorating the spirit. You sink into the hot, fragrant water. The warmth seeps into your bones, a welcome relief from the persistent chill of the castle. You have a block of soap, likely made from animal fat, tallow, and wood ash, lye. But for a lady of your means, it might be a finer soap made with olive oil, a luxury import from Spain or Italy known as Castile soap. It's softer and gentler on the skin. You lather the soap on a linen cloth and scrub your body, the scents of the herbs mingling with the clean smell of the soap. It's a quiet, peaceful ritual, a moment of pure, solitary comfort. Public bathhouses or stews were also extremely common in medieval towns and cities, challenging the myth of the unwashed masses even further. They functioned much like modern spas, offering hot baths, steam rooms, and sometimes even services like haircuts, shaving, and basic dentistry. They were social hubs where people of all classes could go to get clean and relax. However, by the late Middle Ages, their reputation began to decline. They became increasingly associated with excessive drinking and prostitution. And as outbreaks of syphilis began to sweep across Europe, moralists and physicians alike began to warn against the dangers of public bathing, leading to the closure of many establishments. So, while your great-grandmother might have frequented a lively public bathhouse, you, as a respectable noblewoman, now take your baths in the privacy and safety of your own chamber. Once you emerge from the water, skin pink and soft, you are dried with warm linen towels. But the process of scenting your body is not over. You don't have spray-on deodorant or antiperspirant. Instead, you rely on perfumed powders and pomanders. You might dust your skin, particularly your underarms, with a fine powder made from ground orris root, which has a delicate violet-like scent and helps to absorb moisture. For a more lasting fragrance and to combat the miasmas or bad air that were believed to cause disease, you have a pomander. Yours is a beautiful piece of jewelry, a small ornate sphere of silver filigree that opens up into segments, like an orange. Each segment is packed with a different aromatic substance. Hardened pastes of ambergris, a waxy substance from the intestine of a sperm whale, highly prized for its rich scent. Musk, a secretion from the musk deer. Civet, from the civet cat. And fragrant spices like cloves, cinnamon and nutmeg, all bound together with beeswax or gum arabic. The pomander hangs from a chain around your waist or neck. As you move, it releases a small cloud of rich, spicy and exotic perfume. It's your personal air freshener, a fragrant bubble that follows you through the halls of the castle, warding off both unpleasant smells and the sickness they were thought to carry. You might even have one that is much simpler, a single dried orange studded with cloves, its festive scent a constant companion. Oral hygiene is also a concern. You don't have a toothbrush with nylon bristles, but you understand the importance of clean teeth and fresh breath. Your routine is simple but effective. After a meal, you might rinse your mouth with clean water or a bit of wine. To scrub your teeth, you use a rough linen cloth, rubbing it against the tooth surfaces to remove food particles. Sometimes this cloth might be dipped in a paste made from powdered sage, salt, or charcoal to act as a mild abrasive and freshener. Oh, sweeten your breath. You chew on aromatic seeds like fennel or anise, or a sprig of parsley or mint. It's a far cry from fluoride toothpaste and mouthwash, but it's a dedicated effort to maintain oral health and social pleasantries. Remember those lead-based cosmetics? The slow decay of your teeth is something you are acutely aware of, and you do what you can to preserve them and mask any unpleasantness. As you stand now, clean, perfumed and powdered, you feel refreshed and refined. The auras of rose, lavender and exotic spice cling to your skin and your clothes. It's a complex and layered approach to hygiene and scent, deeply intertwined with ideas about health, class and piety. It is a world where cleanliness is not just about the absence of dirt, but the presence of beautiful, protective and spiritually uplifting fragrances. The idea that medieval people were oblivious to odor is a profound misunderstanding. They were obsessed with it, they just had a completely different and arguably more fragrant arsenal for fighting it. Now, clean, scented and fully prepared, you stand before your long silver mirror to assess the final element of your appearance, your silhouette. Just as, with the face, medieval beauty standards for the female body were precise, demanding and shaped by a complex interplay of social, religious and artistic ideals. The goal is not the athletic toned figure that might be prized today. Instead, the most fashionable shape is one of delicacy and perceived fertility, a look often referred to by art historians as the Gothic S-bend. To achieve this, you alter your posture. You stand with your hips pushed forward, your back swayed and your shoulders pulled back, creating a gentle, curving line through your body. The most crucial part of this silhouette is the stomach. A flat, taut abdomen is not the goal. Instead, a high, rounded and prominent belly is considered the absolute pinnacle of female beauty. You place a hand over your lower abdomen, a gesture seen in countless portraits of the era. This rounded stomach was a powerful symbol of fertility and potential motherhood, the most important role for a noble woman. In a time of high infant mortality and precarious dynastic succession, A woman's ability to bear children, specifically male heirs, was her greatest asset. A prominent belly, whether from pregnancy or simply posture and padding, was a constant public advertisement of this potential. This ideal was so pervasive that it's often called the pregnant virgin look, as it was fashionable even for young, unmarried women to cultivate this rounded silhouette. Your clothing is designed to emphasize this specific shape. Your gown, or cotehardie, is cut to be extremely tight through the shoulders, bust and torso, flaring out dramatically from the hips. There is no corset, as we might think of it from later periods, designed to cinch the waist into an hourglass shape. The waist is high, just under the bust, and the fabric of the skirt is gathered or pleated in the front to add extra volume. You might even wear a small padded roll, a sort of medieval bumpet for your tummy, tied around your waist beneath your gown to enhance the curve. The overall effect is a figure that is slender in the arms and shoulders, but full and rounded from the waist down, a shape that is at once delicate and maternal. Achieving the slender upper body required for this look is a matter of diet, which for a noble woman is as much about performance and piety as it is about nutrition. The quantities of food available at a high-status banquet were immense, course after course of roasted meats, savoury pies, jellies and sweets. But for you, partaking in this feast is a delicate dance. Gluttony is a deadly sin, and restraint is a sign of a refined and spiritual nature. You will take only the smallest, most delicate portions onto your plate, eating slowly and deliberately. Your diet is generally meagre, centered on light foods thought to be suitable for a delicate female constitution. The white meat of birds like chicken and pheasant, fish, eggs, and fine white bread. Red meat was often considered too coarse and hot for the female temperament. Furthermore, your life is punctuated by the religious calendar of fasting. The church dictated periods of abstinence from meat and dairy, on Fridays during Lent and on the vigils of major feast days. For the truly pious, fasting went even further, with some women consuming little more than bread and water for days on end as a form of spiritual devotion. This constant cycle of fasting and meagre eating naturally contributed to the slender frames that were in fashion. A slim body was not just a mark of beauty, but also of piety. It showed that you were not a slave to carnal appetites, that you had mastered the base desires of the flesh. For a final touch of bizarre beauty wisdom, you might consult a text like the Trotula. This famous collection of writings on women's medicine from the 12th century is a fascinating mix of practical medical advice and what we would consider pure magic. Historians still argue whether the author Trotula was a real female physician from Salerno, Italy, or if the texts were a compilation from various male and female authors. Regardless of its origin, its advice was influential. Within its pages you would find not just recipes for skin whiteners and hair dyes, but also more peculiar secrets. For instance, to remove superfluous hair, like those pesky eyebrows. The Trotula suggests a poultice of ants' eggs and vinegar. For slimming, it might suggest concoctions that would be considered powerful purgatives, designed to empty the body. One of the most curious tidbits from the Trotula and similar texts is a method for faking virginity, a matter of life or death importance for a bride-to-be. The text suggests that a woman could insert a leech into her vagina to draw blood, thereby creating proof of her purity on her wedding night. It's a grisly, desperate measure that speaks volumes about the immense pressure placed upon women's bodies to conform to social and moral expectations. While you, a respectable married lady, are past this particular concern, the existence of such advice highlights the extreme lengths to which women were pushed. You take one last look in the silver mirror. You see a figure from an illuminated manuscript looking back. The face is a pale white oval, cheeks and lips touched with a secret stain. The eyes are dark, mysterious pools. The hair is gone, hidden away beneath layers of linen, and the forehead is a high, gleaming dome. The body is a graceful, swaying curve, announcing its potential for motherhood with a rounded belly. You are a walking work of art, a symbol of your family's wealth, your husband's status, and your own piety. Every part of your appearance tells a story, carefully constructed through a daily ritual of paint, poison, plucking, and prayer. As you turn away from the mirror and prepare to glide into the great hall, you are the very picture of medieval beauty, serene, strange, and beautiful in a way that is almost entirely forgotten. And as you finally settle into your own bed tonight, you can be grateful that your beauty routine likely doesn't involve lead, nightshade, or mouse fur. What having a toothache was like in medieval times. The first hint of trouble doesn't arrive with a bang. There is no sudden, sharp crack, no shocking moment of impact. It begins as a murmur, a whisper in the back of your jaw as you lie on your straw mattress in the pre-dawn chill. The world outside your small wattle and daub home is still a soft, deep grey, the birds not yet stirring. But inside your own head, something is awake. You shift, turning your head on the coarse linen pillow. And there it is again. A low, persistent thrum, like a bee trapped in a jar. At first, you can ignore it. It is just one of many small, everyday discomforts. Perhaps you slept on it wrong. Perhaps it's just the damp cold seeping into your bones, a familiar ache of winter. You rise, the floorboards cold beneath your bare feet, and go about the morning's rituals. You stir the embers in the central hearth, coaxing them back to life. The smell of wood smoke and damp earth fills the single room, but the hum in your jaw remains, a quiet companion to the crackle of the fire. Breaking your fast is when the whisper begins to speak a little louder. The bread is dark, coarse, and wonderfully filling, but today, each chew on the left side of your mouth sends a dull, resonant pulse up towards your ear. It's not a sharp pain, not yet. It is an announcement, a warning. You instinctively switch to chewing on the right side, a simple adjustment that you hope will solve the problem. Out of sight, out of mind, or in this case, out of bite, out of mind. But it isn't. As the day wears on, the thrum becomes a steady, rhythmic ache. It is the metronome by which the hours now pass. While you are mending a fence, the rhythmic pounding of your hammer seems to be in sync with the pulsing in your tooth. When you are drawing water from the well, the cold air that sweeps across the field seems to find the one tiny, vulnerable spot in your mouth, sending a fresh wave of deep, cold ache through you. It's no longer possible to ignore. The problem has a name now, a familiar and dreaded one: toothache. And in your mind, as in the minds of everyone you know, the cause is obvious. It is not decay. It is not an invisible sickness of the bone. It is the toothworm. Everyone knows of the toothworm. Sages and physicians have written of it for 1,000 years, and their wisdom has trickled down to the village level, becoming simple, unquestioned fact. It is a tiny, insidious creature, a minuscule white worm that burrows into the soft core of a tooth to feast. It gnaws and drinks, growing fat on your misery. This is why the pain comes in waves. It is the worm, twisting and writhing in its small, dark home. It seems this particular worm has a taste for your molar specifically, a picky connoisseur of your personal agony. You run your tongue over the offending tooth. It feels larger than the others somehow, a mountain on the landscape of your mouth. You press a finger to your cheek and a deep, profound ache radiates outwards. The worm, you think, is active today. There are, of course, things one can try. You know the simple fireside remedies. You take a mouthful of lukewarm water, salted from the precious supply, and swish it around, trying to drown the creature, or at least make its home less comfortable. The warmth is soothing for a moment, a brief reprieve. But when you spit the water out into the dirt, the cold air rushes back in, and the pain returns with a vengeance, as if you have personally offended it. Later, you try a more advanced diagnostic technique, or so you like to think. You take a small wooden bowl, fill it with clean water, and lean over it in the dim light of a tallow candle. The idea is to hold your mouth open and breathe onto the water's surface, hoping to see the worm, or evidence of it, emerge. You stare intently at your own murky reflection, your breath misting the water. You are looking for a tiny ripple, a thread-like shape. You see nothing but the wavering reflection of your own worried face. A part of you is relieved. Another, more desperate part is disappointed. An enemy you can see is an enemy you can fight. Historians still argue whether the average medieval diet, with its lack of refined sugar, actually led to fewer cavities than our modern one. While you and your neighbours are not consuming sugary sweets, your diet is full of coarse grains and abrasive foods that wear down the enamel of the teeth over time, exposing the softer dentin beneath. This creates a perfect opening for the kinds of decay that your world simply interprets as a worm finding a new burrow. Your healthy, sugar-free bread may well be the very thing that ground down your defences. It's a cruel irony, though not one you have the luxury of contemplating. Your entire focus is on the persistent, gnawing pulse in your head. As evening falls, the pain sharpens. The dull ache is finding its edge. The warmth of the hearth, which should be a comfort, seems to make the tooth throb more intensely. You try to eat the evening pottage, a mush of boiled grains and whatever vegetables were available, but even the soft food is a challenge. Each spoonful feels like a gamble. You are quieter than usual. Your family notices, of course. A toothache is a common enough misery that the signs are easily read. The slight wince, the hand that strays to the jaw, the careful way of speaking without moving your mouth too much. You receive sympathetic looks, perhaps a suggestion to hold a clove in your mouth if any are to be had. But there are none. Cloves are a spice from a faraway land, a treasure for a lord's kitchen, not yours. Your pharmacy is the field and the forest, and your knowledge is a tapestry of handed-down wisdom and local superstition. You know that sternly thinking at the worm to encourage it to leave is, generally, ineffective. Lying back down on your mattress that night, you find sleep is a distant shore. The darkness is no longer peaceful. It is an amplifier. The tiny sounds of the house settling, the breathing of your family nearby, the distant hoot of an owl, all of it is a backdrop to the insistent throbbing symphony happening inside your own skull. The pain is no longer a whisper. It is a steady, commanding voice. And it is telling you that salt water and wishful thinking are not going to be enough. Tomorrow, you will have to seek help. Real help. And that thought is, in its own way, almost as frightening as the pain itself. The sun rises on a new day of the same old pain. Last night was a long and arduous journey through varying shades of misery, and sleep, when it finally came, was thin and restless. The toothworm, it seems, does not sleep. It works through the night, throat, diligently expanding its domain. The ache is no longer just in the tooth. It has become a grander affair. A deep, sore throb has colonized the entire left side of your face. It's in your jawbone, your ear, the hollow beneath your eye. Your first stop is not the village proper, but a small cottage on its edge, where the widow Elspeth lives. She is not a physician, such a thing is for nobles and wealthy merchants in the city. Elspeth is a healer, a wise woman. Her currency is not coin, but barter and respect. Her knowledge comes from her mother and her mother before her, a long, unwritten line of herbal lore. You bring with you a small offering, a handful of eggs from your hen, carefully wrapped in a cloth. The air in her single-room cottage is thick with the scent of drying herbs. Bunches of them hang from the rafters, yarrow, comfrey, chamomile, each with its purpose. Elspeth herself is ancient, her face a road map of wrinkles, but her eyes are clear and sharp. You don't have to explain much. She sees the swelling on your cheek, the way you hold your head, the tired look in your eyes. She nods slowly, listening to your short, mumbled description of the worm's activity. She pokes gently at your cheek, her touch surprisingly firm, and you wince. An angry one, she murmurs, more to herself than to you. He is settled in deep. First comes the fumigation. This is a classic and highly respected treatment for dislodging a toothworm. Elspeth takes a shard of pottery and places a few hot coals from her hearth onto it. On top of the coals, she sprinkles a mixture of foul-smelling powdered henbane seeds and dried onions. A thick, acrid smoke begins to curl upwards. Your job is to lean over this miniature, unholy barbecue and inhale the fumes through your mouth, letting the smoke fill the cavity where the worm resides. The logic is sound in a way. What creature, however stubborn, would not flee such an unpleasant smog? You lean in, coughing as the bitter smoke hits the back of your throat. Your eyes water. The smoke stings and chokes, but you endure it, praying the worm finds it even more disagreeable than you do. After a few minutes of this ordeal, Elspeth has you spit into a bowl of clean water. You both peer into the murky liquid, searching for the drowned corpse of your tormentor. You might even see a few little specks, perhaps tiny pieces of the henbane seed, which your hopeful eyes convince you are the evicted worm. For a moment, you feel a surge of optimism, but the deep, throbbing ache in your jaw tells a different, more honest story. The worm has merely been annoyed, not evicted. Plan B is a poultice. Elspeth mixes mashed figs and roasted garlic into a warm, sticky paste. The mainstream historical fact is that garlic has been known for millennia to have antiseptic properties, a real and tangible medical benefit recognized from ancient Egypt to medieval Europe. She smears the pungent concoction onto a small piece of linen and tells you to hold it against the outside of your swollen cheek. The warmth is genuinely soothing, a gentle counter-pressure to the ache within. It smells, well, it smells like you're planning to ward off a vampire with a bad head cold, but you are well past caring about such things. As you sit there, poultice pressed to your face, Elspeth prepares a charm. Religion and folk magic are not separate paths here. They are braided together. She takes a fresh piece of parchment, a true expense, and carefully writes a prayer to Saint Apollonia, the patron saint of toothache sufferers. The story is well known. Apollonia was a martyr in the 3rd century whose teeth were brutally shattered and pulled out as a form of torture. Therefore, she understands your pain intimately. praying to her for intercession is a perfectly reasonable and pious thing to do. But this is where the quirky tidbit comes in. Elspeth doesn't just give you the prayer to recite. She instructs you that the charm will only work if it is worn. You are to fold the parchment into a tiny square, sew it into a small leather pouch, and wear it around your neck. The written word itself has power, and its physical proximity to your body is what will do the healing. She also mutters another older rhyme, one that doesn't mention saints at all, something about moonlight and beetle wings. It's best to cover all your bases. You leave Elspeth's cottage with the warm, garlicky poultice still stuck to your face and the prayer charm hanging around your neck. You feel equipped. You have taken action. The pain is still there, of course, a loyal and unwavering companion, but it is now overlaid with a fragile layer of hope. Perhaps the combination of the smoke, the poultice, and the prayer will be enough. It is not. By the time you get home, the warmth from the poultice has faded, leaving only a cold, sticky patch of cloth and the persistent smell of garlic. The ache in your jaw, which had seemed to retreat slightly, roars back with renewed vigor, as if it took your attempts to treat it as a personal insult. You spend the afternoon trying to distract yourself. You go to the market, not to buy, but just to be among people, to listen to the sounds of commerce and conversation. You see the blacksmith's apprentice, a boy of about 16, and you notice for the first time that he is missing a front tooth. It lends his youthful grin a slightly lopsided, vacant quality, a reminder of a potential future. The pain makes you irritable. The casual laughter of others seems to mock your private suffering. A dog barks, and the sound vibrates painfully through your skull. You buy nothing, speak to no one, and trudge back home, your hand held protectively against your face. The world feels muted, its colours less vibrant, all its sensations filtered through the thick gauze of your pain. You try chewing on a piece of willow bark, something you heard a traveller once mention, but it is bitter and accomplishes nothing. That night is worse than the last. The poultice has been discarded. The charm around your neck feels foolish and light against your skin, a flimsy defence against such a monstrous pain. Sleep is impossible. You pace the small space of your home in the dark. You press a cold stone from the hearth to your cheek. You sit and stare into the dying embers. The pain is no longer a pulse. It is a sharp, jagged saw relentlessly carving away at your peace. There is no more ignoring it, no more placating it with gentle herbs. The worm has won. You have exhausted the gentle options. Now there is only one path left. It is the one you have been dreading. It leads to the barber surgeon. Morning light feels like an accusation. It illuminates the sleepless exhaustion on your face and casts a harsh glare on the single terrifying decision that has finally taken root in your mind. The remedies of the wise woman have failed. The prayers to Saint Apollonia have gone unanswered. The worm, far from being placated, has thrown a veritable feast in your jaw, and the resulting agony is a sharp, white-hot fire that lances up to your temple with every beat of your heart. Eating is unthinkable. Speaking is a careful, painful chore. You are a ghost in your own life, haunted by a demon in your mouth. There is no more deliberation. You set off towards the centre of the village, to the striped pole that marks the shop of the barber surgeon. The barber surgeon is a man of many talents, and all of them are sharp. He can give you a shave, cut your hair, let your blood to balance your humours, and, when all else fails, pull a tooth. His shop is a hub of village life, a place of gossip and grooming, but today you see none of its cheerful mundanity. For you it is a place of judgment, a tribunal where your rotting tooth is the accused, and the verdict is exile by iron. You push open the wooden door, and the smells hit you. The soapy scent of shaving, a coppery tang of old blood, and something acrid, maybe from lancing a boil. The barber, a large man named Thomas with formidable forearms, is finishing up a haircut. He looks over at you, and his practiced eye takes in your swollen face and your guarded posture. He nods, a silent acknowledgement. He knows why you're here. There is no queue for this particular service. People do not line up eagerly. While you wait for him to finish with his customer, your eyes drift to the tools of his trade laid out on a wooden table. You see the neat razors for shaving, the shears, the bowls for bloodletting. And then you see them. The instruments for the mouth. They do not look like a modern dentist's sleek, precise tools. They look like something a blacksmith would use to work stubborn iron. The most prominent among them is the dental pelican. It's a terrifying-looking claw of wrought iron, named because its beak-like shape resembles that of the bird. Historians know this was the primary tool for extraction for centuries. It's not designed for a delicate, wiggling removal. It's designed for leverage. It works by placing a fulcrum against the adjacent teeth and hooking a claw under the crown of the offending tooth. Then you pull, sideways. The sheer physics of it makes your stomach churn. You can already imagine the pressure on your other, healthy teeth, the horrifying creak and groan of root being torn from bone. Next to the pelican is a fearsome-looking key, another tool of leverage and force, and a few simple, brutal-looking forceps called tongs. Thomas finishes his haircut, wipes his razor on a cloth, and turns his full attention to you. He does not offer a chair. Such courtesies are not part of this procedure. You will stand. He beckons you closer to the light from the open doorway. "Open," he says, his voice flat and professional. You obey, tilting your head back. The bright light is momentarily blinding. His face looms over you, smelling faintly of soap and iron. He prods around inside your mouth with a finger that feels as big and blunt as a sausage. He taps the tooth with a small metal tool, and a jolt of pure, electric fire shoots through your skull, making your vision blur and your knees weak. You let out a muffled groan. "Aye, she's a rotten one," he says, with the detached air of a man diagnosing a sick sheep. "The worm's had his fill. She'll have to come out." There is no discussion of alternatives, no gentle probing of other options. The verdict has been delivered. He turns to the table and picks up the pelican. The iron is dull and dark. You see a fleck of dried blood near the hinge from its last victim. There is no sterilization, of course. The concept of germ theory is centuries away. At best, he might wipe the tool on the same rag he used for his razor. Now comes the question of pain relief. Your only option, really, is a healthy swallow of cheap, strong wine, or perhaps a distilled spirit like aquavite, if the barber is a fancy one. This isn't for numbing, you understand. There is nothing that can numb this. This is for courage. Or, more accurately, to dull your senses just enough that you might not faint from the shock. Thomas hands you a small wooden cup of something harsh and fiery. It burns its way down your throat, a brief, clean heat that is a paltry distraction from the inferno in your jaw. He tells you to brace yourself against the wall. A friend or a family member might be called in to hold your arms and head steady, to prevent you from flinching away at the critical moment. You are now less a patient and more an object, a thing to be held fast while a part of it is forcibly removed. You grip the rough-hewn timbers of the wall behind you, your knuckles white. The barber leans in again. Open wide. The metal of the pelican is cold against your gums. You taste iron and fear. He fumbles for a moment, trying to get a good purchase. You can feel the metal claw trying to hook under the edge of your tooth, the smooth, horrifying scrape of it against the enamel. The pressure of the fulcrum on the neighbouring teeth is immense. You feel a dreadful sense of violation, a primitive, deep-seated terror. This is not healing, this is controlled violence. Then he begins to pull. It is a sensation for which you have no words. It is not a clean, sharp pain. It is a deeply foundational tearing. It is the sound of your own roots ripping away from the bone that has held them your entire life. A wet, grating, crunching sound that you hear not with your ears, but with your entire skull. The pressure is immense. Your vision whites out. You think your jaw might shatter. The barber grunts with effort, shifting his weight. Your own body is slick with a cold sweat. You are groaning, a low, animal sound you can't control. The universe narrows to this single point of unbearable, brutal pressure. It seems to go on for an eternity. The tool slips. He swears under his breath and repositions it, sending a fresh, sickening jolt through you. He pulls again, twisting this time. There is a hideous, deep crack, a sound of finality, and then a sudden, shocking release of pressure replaced by a hot, wet gush. He steps back, holding the pelican aloft. Clamped in its iron claw is your tooth, or what's left of it. It's a mangled, bloody thing, its roots jagged and splintered. He shows it to you, a trophy of his victory. You look at it, dazed. You can't connect that broken thing to the source of all your misery. Your mouth is full of blood, coppery and thick. The pain is not gone. It has simply changed its character. The sharp, focused ache of the tooth has been replaced by the raw, throbbing agony of the empty socket, a fresh, open wound in your jaw. The barber hands you a cloth. Bite on this, he instructs, and no solid food for a day. It'll heal. He wipes the pelican on his rag and sets it back on the table, ready for its next use. Your transaction is complete. You pay him his fee, perhaps with a coin, perhaps with a promise of a bushel of wheat at harvest time. You stumble out of his shop, back into the familiar daylight, but the world looks different. It is swimmy and vague through your veil of shock and pain. You are walking, but you feel detached, floating. You have faced the iron and survived, but the ordeal is not yet over. Now, you have a new battle to fight. The aftermath. You make your way home in a fog. The short walk back to your cottage feels like a pilgrimage across a vast and unforgiving landscape. Every footstep sends a dull, jarring thud up through your body, each one culminating in a fresh wave of throbbing from the new, gaping hole in your jaw. The world, which was muted by the ache before, is now razor-sharp and hostile. The cheerful chatter of your neighbours feels like an assault. The sun is too bright. The air is too cold against the raw wound in your mouth. You spend the rest of the day lying on your straw mattress, the bloody rag held firmly between your teeth. The initial shock begins to wear off, but it's not replaced by relief. Instead, a new kind of pain settles in, the deep, tender agony of traumatized bone and torn flesh. It is a vast and open pain, completely different from the focused, contained malevolence of the toothache. The worm might be gone, but its ghost remains, haunting the cavity it left behind. You are not to eat solid food, the barber surgeon instructed. This is less a medical directive and more a statement of the obvious. The thought of chewing anything, even the softest bread, is impossible. Your meal for the next few days will consist of thin broths, watery pottage, and perhaps milk, if you are fortunate enough to have it. You sip cautiously from a bowl, trying to guide the liquid to the safe side of your mouth. Even so, a stray drop finds its way to the wound, and the sensitivity makes you flinch, your whole body tensing. Sleep that night is not a reprieve. You drift in and out of a shallow, feverish state. The empty space in your mouth feels enormous, a cavernous void you compulsively explore with the tip of your tongue. You can feel the sharp edges of fractured bone, the spongy texture of the healing clot. Every swallow is a conscious, painful effort. The metallic taste of blood is ever present. You dream strange, disjointed dreams of birds with iron beaks and of your own teeth falling out like pebbles. In the days that follow, your primary enemy changes from pain to fear. The great, unspoken terror after an extraction is infection. You live in a world where a small cut from a rusty nail can lead to a swollen, blackened limb, and then to death. Your mouth, a warm, wet environment full of food particles and mystery, is the perfect breeding ground for sickness. Every morning you wake up, and the first thing you do, before you even fully open your eyes, is take inventory. Is the swelling going down? Is the pain lessening even slightly? Or is there a new kind of heat, a foul taste, a sickness spreading through your blood? You dutifully rinse with salted water, a folk remedy that, by happy coincidence, is genuinely one of the best things you could be doing. The salt helps to cleanse the wound and reduce the risk of putrefaction. You might also go back to the wise woman Elspeth for a soothing rinse made of boiled yarrow or plantain leaves, both of which have astringent properties that could help the tissues to heal. This is the height of post-operative care. There are no antibiotics, no painkillers beyond a sip of wine or a prayer. Your recovery depends entirely on the resilience of your own body. Slowly, mercifully, the raw agony begins to subside. It recedes back into a manageable, dull ache. The swelling on your face diminishes. The bruising fades from an angry purple to a sickly yellow-green. After a few days, you can finally manage soft, soaked bread. The taste and texture are a revelation, a reminder of the simple, thoughtless pleasure of eating. You have survived. The barber's brutal intervention worked, but now you must adjust to a new normal. The empty space in your gum line is a permanent alteration to the landscape of yourself. Eating will be different, forever. Certain foods will now be a challenge. Biting into a crisp apple, for example, will require careful thought and positioning. Your speech might even change slightly, a soft whistle or lisp accompanying certain sounds where your tongue now finds empty air instead of a hard, enamel wall. There is a social consequence too. A full set of white teeth is a sign of youth and health, and in the noble classes of wealth and status. Missing teeth are a marker of age, of poverty, of a hard life. It changes your smile. When you laugh, you might instinctively cover your mouth with your hand, suddenly conscious of the dark gap in your grin. This becomes a small, ingrained habit, a physical manifestation of a private loss. And the reality is, this is just the first. With a diet that grinds down teeth and a medical practice that only offers extraction, the odds are high that you will visit Thomas or his successor again. An old man or woman with only a few lonely teeth remaining is a common sight. In fact, a popular and quirky belief at the time was that you could create a set of false teeth out of ivory or bone, but they had to be tied to the adjacent teeth with gold wire. This was an option available only to the fabulously wealthy, not for someone like you. Your solution is simply to have a gap. It's a natural, if unwelcome, part of aging. Months pass, the gum heals over, leaving a smooth, hard ridge where a molar used to be. The pain becomes a distant memory, a story you can tell. Sometimes you'll be chewing and you will momentarily forget, trying to use a tooth that isn't there, a phantom limb in your own mouth. And in the quiet moments, perhaps lying on your mattress in the pre-dawn chill, you will run your tongue over that smooth, empty space. You think of the worm, of the iron pelican, of the blood. You think of the price of relief, and you are grateful, in a strange and weary way, for the quiet peace of the empty space. It is a silence that you and the barber surgeon paid for dearly. How people handled a headache in the 13th century. It does not begin like a clap of thunder. There is no sudden spike, no sharp, immediate cry for attention. Instead, it begins like a morning mist creeping in from the fens, quietly, gradually, and with an undeniable presence. You are sitting at your loom, your feet working the treadles in a familiar rhythmic dance. The wooden shuttle slides back and forth, thump-clack, laying one thread of wool against another. It is a sound that has defined most of your waking hours for years, a sound that is usually a comfort. But today, the rhythm is wrong, not the loom's rhythm, but your own. A low, dull pressure has begun to build behind your eyes, a subtle weight, as if someone has gently placed a warm stone against your forehead. You pause your work for a moment, blinking. The light from the single unglazed window seems a little too bright, the dust motes dancing in its beam a little too frantic. You convince yourself it is nothing. Perhaps you are tired. Perhaps the smoke from the central hearth is thicker than usual today. You take a slow breath, the air cool and smelling of damp earth and old wool, and you begin again. Thump, clack, thump, clack. An hour passes, the mist has not lifted. In fact, it has thickened into a proper fog, a heavy blanket that seems to be wrapping itself around your entire head. The pressure is no longer just a suggestion, it is an established fact. A dull, consistent band of tension is tightening around your skull, from your temples to the nape of your neck. Every sound, the crackle of the fire, your children's voices in the lane outside, the distant bleating of a sheep, seems to strike that band like a tiny hammer, sending a dull, resonant thud through your brain. In your world, this feeling is not a mystery of nerves or blood vessels. The cause is perfectly understood, explained by physicians for 1,000 years, their wisdom trickling down from great universities to become the simple, accepted truth of your village. Your body, you know, is a delicate ecosystem governed by 4 vital fluids. The humours. They are the pillars that hold up the house of your health. There is blood, which is hot and moist, making you cheerful and sanguine. There is phlegm, cool and moist, giving you a calm, phlegmatic nature. There is yellow bile, hot and dry, the source of choleric anger and ambition. And there is black bile, cool and dry, which brings on melancholy and thoughtful sadness. For you to be well, these 4 humours must be in perfect balance, each one staying in its place and performing its role like a well-behaved servant. The problem is, they are not always well-behaved. They are more like 4 quarrelsome cousins forced to share a small house, and when one gets too bold, the whole household is thrown into disarray. And right now, something in your head is decidedly out of balance. You press the heels of your hands into your eye sockets, seeking a counter-pressure. Is it an excess of choler? The headache feels hot, a dry heat behind your eyes which suggests that the fiery yellow bile may have surged upwards from your liver, flooding your brain with its aggressive warmth. Or could it be a fume? You recall the rich, fatty pork from last night's meal. The learned men say that a poorly digested meal can release malevolent vapours, which rise like smoke up to the brain, irritating it and causing this very misery. You have, in essence, given yourself a head full of angry stomach smoke. Historians still argue whether the complex system of galenic humours was fully understood by common folk, or if it was simplified into more general ideas. Perhaps you don't think in terms of yellow bile, but simply in terms of a hot malady or ill vapours that have ascended to your head. The practical result is the same. You feel a profound sense of internal imbalance, of something inside you being dangerously out of place. The work at the loom becomes impossible. The focus required, the constant back and forth motion only serves to agitate the unwelcome guest in your skull. It now feels as though a tiny, very determined blacksmith has set up a forge in your forehead and is beginning his day's work with a very small hammer. A joke, you think grimly, with no punchline. You stand up slowly, feeling a wave of dizziness as you do. The single room of your cottage feels small, confining. You need air. You step outside into the cool daylight. The damp air is a brief, gentle relief on your hot skin. But the world beyond your door is now an obstacle course. The bright sky is an affront. The crow of a rooster from a nearby yard is a physical blow. You close your eyes, leaning against the rough wattle and daub wall of your home. Your mind begins to cycle through the possibilities. What has caused this? Did you eat something too hot and dry yesterday, feeding the collar? Did you catch a chill that allowed phlegm to build up? Or, and this is a more chilling thought, is it something else? A punishment for a crossword said in anger, or a failure in your evening prayers? The line between the physical and the spiritual is a thin one, easily blurred. A sickness in the body can so often be a sign of a sickness in the soul. One quirky but common belief is that a headache could be caused by worms in the head, much like the worms thought to cause a toothache. The thought is deeply unpleasant, but it offers a tangible enemy, a creature to be expelled rather than a vapour to be calmed. But your pain doesn't feel like gnawing. It feels like pressure, a relentless enclosing squeeze. It's the humours you decide. They are feuding, and your head has become their battlefield. You sigh a long, weary exhalation. Ignoring it is no longer an option. You tried that, and it seems your humours took it as a challenge. It's clear they are not going to settle down on their own. You will have to intervene. You will need to seek a remedy, to find something to cool the heat, to soothe the angry bile, to restore the delicate peace that has been so thoroughly broken. Your gaze drifts towards the small patch of ground behind the cottage where you grow your herbs. It is there, among the familiar green leaves and simple flowers, that your first attempt at a cure must begin. You turn your back on the overwhelming world and head towards the small patch of cultivated ground that serves as your pharmacy and your kitchen pantry. Your garden is a modest affair, a few rows of leeks and onions, some hardy greens, but along the edge, sheltered by the cottage wall, are your precious herbs. Each footstep on the soft earth is deliberate, careful. You are trying not to jostle the angry fog in your head. Your destination is a familiar clump of green. Betony. It is the sovereign remedy for afflictions of the head, a truth so widely known it requires no questioning. Alongside it grows vervain, another powerful ally in the fight against internal pains. Bending down slowly, you pinch the stems and gather a handful of the rough green leaves. Their scent is earthy and sharp, the smell of life and healing. In this moment, holding these simple plants, you feel a flicker of control, of agency against the formless, invisible thing attacking you from within. Back inside, away from the sharp daylight, you begin your work. You place the leaves in a small, worn mortar of stone, and with a wooden pestle, you begin to crush them. The rhythmic thump, thump, thump is a softer, more purposeful sound than the hammering in your skull. As you grind, the leaves release their moisture, turning from a brittle pile into a dark green, fragrant paste. To this, you add a drizzle of vinegar. The sharp, acidic scent cuts through the heavy air of the cottage, a clean smell that promises a kind of scouring power. You are creating a weapon. The most famous medical texts, like the compiled wisdom known as the Trotula, often recommend these exact plants. This isn't some wild guess you're making. You are participating in a mainstream historical tradition of using specific herbs for specific ailments. Your simple cottage remedy is a distant country cousin to the preparations made in monastic infirmaries and the homes of nobles. The core belief is the same. The poultice, applied to the skin, will act like a magnet, drawing the hot, excessive humour or the foul vapours out of your head and into the plaster of crushed leaves. With the paste prepared, you lie down on your straw bed, the coarse linen tickle a familiar sensation against your cheek. You scoop the cool, damp mash from the mortar and spread it carefully across your forehead. The initial shock of the cold is intense, a stark contrast to the heat radiating from your skin. For a moment, it is almost too much. But then the cold gives way to a gentle, spreading coolness. It is deeply, wonderfully soothing. It feels as if the poultice is waging a quiet, cool war against the feverish pressure inside. The blacksmith in your head seems to have paused, perhaps surprised by this sudden change in the weather. But the herbs alone are not always enough. The physical world must be supported by the spiritual. The body is connected to the soul, and so your cure must address both. You close your eyes, the green poultice a cool weight on your brow, and begin to recite a charm. It is a string of words learned from your grandmother, a low murmur in the quiet room. It starts with an appeal, a pious nod to the heavens, perhaps invoking a saint known for suffering, like St. Denis, who, according to legend, picked up his own severed head and walked with it for miles. Surely a man who could do that would understand your comparatively minor inconvenience. Then the charm shifts. The language becomes more direct, speaking not to God, but to the ailment itself. Foul vapour, heated bile, you might whisper. I command you, flee this vessel. Go into the green field of this brow, leave this bone house in peace. Historians still argue whether the common person saw a true distinction between a prayer and a charm, or if both were simply different tools from the same celestial toolbox used to influence an unpredictable world. Was this an act of faith or an act of magic? To you, lying there in the dim light, the distinction is meaningless. It is an act of hope. You recall a curious bit of lore, a technique for more stubborn cases, a quirky, fringe tidbit that claims the charm is more effective if it is whispered into the left ear, forcing the ailment to flee out of the right. The logic feels sound enough, giving the sickness a clear exit path. You don't try it, not yet. That feels like an escalation. For now, the general broadcast to the universe should suffice. Presumably, an all-knowing creator knows which ear to listen to. For a long while, there is only the feeling of the cool, damp herbs on your skin and the low thrumming of your own blood in your ears. And for a while, it seems to be working. The tight band around your skull loosens its grip. The pressure behind your eyes recedes from a driving force to a gentle push. You are not cured, not by any means, but you have found a truce. You lie still, breathing slowly, not daring to move for fear of breaking the fragile peace you have brokered with your own body. The relief lasts for perhaps an hour, but as the poultice on your forehead begins to warm to your body temperature and its moisture evaporates, the headache stirs. The blacksmith, it seems, just finished his lunch break and is back at the forge. The pressure returns, creeping back with a sly, familiar insistence. The mist is thickening into a storm. Your heart sinks. The betony has failed you. The vinegar was not sharp enough. The charm, it appears, was not persuasive enough. Perhaps the vervain wasn't harvested under the correct phase of the moon, or perhaps the ill fume in your head is just particularly stubborn. A sense of weary helplessness begins to creep in. You have used the tools available to you, the gentle wisdom of the garden and the sky, and they have proven insufficient. The headache is now worse than it was this morning. It seems to have taken your attempted cure as an insult, and has returned with reinforcements. The pain is no longer a dull pressure, it has found a sharp, throbbing edge. Light and sound are no longer just irritants, they are physical torment. Lying in the dark is your only refuge, but even there, in the quiet of your own mind, the pain is a roaring tide. You have exhausted the gentle options. This is not a fleeting imbalance, a minor vapor easily dispersed. This is a deep-seated rebellion of your humours. And such a rebellion requires a stronger, more expert hand to quell it. It requires someone who can do more than just apply leaves to the skin. It requires a physician and his much sharper tools. The decision to seek out the physician is not made lightly. He is a man of learning and of fees, and his services are reserved for ailments that have proven resistant to the humble cures of the hearth and garden. To visit him is to admit defeat. It is to confess that your own body has become a hostile territory, that you can no longer navigate on your own. But the pain, which has now become a blinding, relentless siege, leaves you no choice. It has moved beyond a simple discomfort and into a state of pure suffering. You arrange for a neighbour to look after your children and your loom, and you begin the slow, arduous walk into the small market town, where the physician keeps his rooms. Every step is a misery. The world feels tilted, unreal. The familiar path seems to stretch on for miles, each rut and stone a potential source of a jarring motion that sends a fresh spike of agony through your temple. You walk with your eyes half closed, your hand shielding your brow as if you could physically hold back the light of the sun. The physician is not a barber-surgeon like Thomas with his razors and his terrifying pelican. He is a more elevated figure. He likely studied at a university, perhaps in Salerno or Montpellier, and he speaks with the quiet authority of a man who has read the great works of Galen and Avicenna. His rooms are not a chaotic public shop, but a quiet, private space that smells of parchment, dried herbs, and the faint, sweet odour of exotic spices used in his medicines. He greets you not with tools, but with questions. He is a detective, and the crime scene is your body. He bids you sit, and you sink gratefully into a heavy wooden chair. The dim light of the room is a balm to your tortured eyes. He asks about the nature of the pain. Is it sharp or dull? Pulsing or constant? Where is it located? He wants to know what you ate, how you have been sleeping, the color and consistency of your urine, which you have dutifully brought with you in a small glass vial for his inspection. Uroscopy, the diagnostic examination of urine, is a cornerstone of medieval medicine. It is a window into the body's internal state. He holds the vial up to the light of the window, peering at it with the intense concentration of a jeweler examining a gem. He observes its color, a rich, dark yellow, its clarity, the sediment gathered at the bottom. To him, this is not waste. It is a text to be read, a letter from your embattled organs. After a few minutes of quiet contemplation and soft questions, he renders his verdict. It confirms what you already suspected. Your headache, my good woman, he announces in a calm, measured tone, stems from an excess of choler. Too much hot, dry humor has gathered in your head, creating a terrible pressure and heat. Your poor digestion of the pork dinner, he explains, contributed to this, creating a fuliginous vapor, a sooty smoke that has risen and become trapped in your brain pan. He speaks with such certainty that it is impossible to doubt him. The diagnosis is made. Now for the cure. He will not offer you a simple poultice. This condition, he explains, is too advanced. It requires a more direct, more potent intervention to release the pressure and draw out the offending heat. He must open a vein. Bloodletting. This is the ultimate mainstream tool for rebalancing the humours, a practice used to treat everything from fevers to heartache. It is based on a clear principle. If you have too much of a particular humour in your body, the simplest way to solve the problem is to let some of it out. And since all the humours are mixed together in the blood, letting blood removes a portion of each, allowing the body to find its equilibrium again. It's like opening a floodgate on a dammed river. He tells you to roll up your sleeve. His tools are laid out neatly on a clean linen cloth. A small, sharp lancet with a gleaming blade, a wooden bowl to catch the blood, and clean bandages of soft linen. This is a far more precise and less frantic affair than the tooth pulling. This is considered high medicine. He is not fighting with your body. He is assisting it. He feels for the vein on the inside of your arm, his fingers probing gently. His touch is cool and professional. This will not take a moment, he says, his voice intended to be reassuring. You brace yourself, turning your head away to stare at the wall. You do not want to see the blade. There is a quick, sharp sting, cleaner and faster than you expected, as the lancet breaks the skin, and then a warmth spreads across your arm as the blood begins to flow. He guides it into the smooth, polished bowl. You risk a glance. The blood is a shocking, vibrant crimson. It pools in the bottom of the bowl, looking impossibly alive. He watches the flow with an expert's eye, judging the quantity, perhaps even the colour, for signs of the choleric excess he expects to see. To you, it just looks like your life force draining into a piece of pottery, a rather alarming sight on a Tuesday afternoon. A strange lightness begins to spread through you. The initial panic gives way to a kind of languid calm. Is it the loss of blood, or is it a psychological effect? As you watch the bowl fill, you feel as though the pressure inside your head is also being released. It is a powerful suggestion. You are seeing the badness leave your body, a visible draining of the very thing that has been tormenting you. Your head feels quieter. The blacksmith inside seems to have finally packed up his forge and left, leaving behind only a faint echo of his hammering. He decides enough has been drawn off. He expertly pinches the wound shut and binds your arm tightly with a clean strip of linen, instructing you not to work it too hard for a day or two. He may offer you a restorative cup of wine, or a small pastille made of ground spices and sugar to chew on to comfort the stomach. His fee is paid and the consultation is over. You stand up slowly, feeling unsteady on your feet. You are weak, pale, and your arm aches with a new, clean pain. But the headache, the monster that drove you here, has retreated. It's not gone completely, but it has shrunk from a roaring giant to a grumbling gnome. The relief is so profound, it makes you want to weep. As you step back out into the light, which now seems less aggressive, you feel a sense of fragile victory. You have faced the lancet and received its harsh blessing. You submitted to the wisdom of the learned man, and it seems he was right. You lost a bowl full of blood, but you have regained a measure of peace. Now all that is left is the slow, quiet journey of recovery. The journey home from the physician's rooms is a slow and deliberate shuffle. You are frail, not just from the headache itself, but from its cure. The loss of blood has left you feeling light, airy, and profoundly tired, as if some essential part of your ballast has been removed. You walk with a careful, measured pace, one hand resting on your bandaged arm, the other no longer needing to shield your eyes from a hostile sun. The world seems to have returned to its normal volume, its normal brightness. The relief is so complete, so blissful, that the weakness in your limbs feels like a fair price to pay. For the next few days you exist in a state of quiet convalescence. You are excused from your heavier duties. The rhythmic clatter of the loom is too strenuous, the hauling of water from the well unthinkable. Instead, you sit in the shade of your cottage, doing light work, mending a worn tunic, shelling peas, or simply watching your children play. Your diet is simple and restorative. The physician advised you to eat foods that would create good, healthy blood, moist and warm things like chicken broth, soft-boiled eggs, and wine mixed with water. You are, in effect, trying to refill the reservoir you so recently drained. The dull ache where the lancet pierced your skin is a constant, gentle reminder of your ordeal. Each time you glance at the clean linen bandage, you feel a small shiver, a memory of the bright blood pooling in the wooden bowl. It's a mark of your battle, a testament to the severity of your ailment and the drastic measures required to vanquish it. Your neighbors and family see the bandage and understand. They treat you with a gentle consideration reserved for the recently unwell. The headache itself is gone, a banished ghost, but in its place is a lingering watchfulness, a fear of its return. Every time you feel a slight pressure in your temples, a hint of tension in your neck, your heart gives a little flutter of anxiety. Is it coming back? Was the bloodletting not enough? Did a small pocket of malevolent humor evade the cure? This new hyper-awareness of your own body is its own kind of burden. You find yourself carefully moderating what you eat, avoiding rich, fatty foods that might provoke your temperamental digestion into creating more fumes. In the quiet evenings, as the light fades, your thoughts sometimes drift to more extreme possibilities. What if the headache had been even worse? What if it had been so unrelenting that even bloodletting did not bring relief? This is where your mind touches on the most dreaded and radical of all cures, trepanation. The very word is enough to cause a chill. It's a procedure where a surgeon would drill or scrape a small hole through the skull bone itself. Historians and archaeologists know that trepanation has been practiced for thousands of years, with skulls from the Neolithic period showing the distinctive, neatly bored holes. The logic, from a humoral perspective, was grimly straightforward. If your head was full of a trapped vapor or a malicious humor that could not be coaxed out by other means, the only option left was to create an escape hatch. It was considered a last resort for conditions like epilepsy, persistent migraines or madness, literally opening a window in the bone house to let the bad air out. While you might not know the history, the idea itself feels ancient and terrifyingly primal. The thought of someone taking a drill to your head is so profoundly horrifying that it makes the sharp, clean sting of the lancet seem like a gentle kiss in comparison. You know of no one who has undergone it. It is the stuff of fearful whispers, a cure so extreme it walks the line between healing and butchery. It makes you profoundly grateful for your own deliverance, for the fact that a simple draining of the arm was sufficient. You touched the smooth bone of your forehead, and you are thankful for its wholeness. Sometimes you also recall that fringe idea, the one you dismissed before, that your headache was caused not by an imbalance, but by a demon. What if the pain had been a sign of a spiritual affliction? Then no amount of bloodletting would have worked. The cure would have been entirely different, involving not a physician, but a priest. It would have required prayers, fasting, perhaps even an exorcism to drive the entity out. A few scholars debate how often chronic headaches were interpreted as demonic possession, but the possibility was real enough to be a source of deep anxiety. It was another path your illness could have taken, one that led to the realm of confession and holy water rather than herbs and lancets. Weeks turn into months. The bandage comes off, leaving behind a tiny, pale scar on your arm. The memory of the pain begins to fade, losing its sharp edges and becoming a dull story. You return to your loom, to your daily chores, to the familiar rhythms of your life. The fear of the headache's return recedes, replaced by the more immediate demands of a hungry family and a leaking roof. Yet, something has changed. You have a deeper, more intimate understanding of your body's fragility. You now know firsthand how quickly the internal peace can be broken, how a simple meal can conspire with your own humours to lay you low. You have been taken to the edge of your endurance and brought back by a strange combination of herbal lore, scholastic theory, and controlled injury. Lying in your bed at night, you can sometimes still feel the ghost of the pressure, the echo of the blacksmith's hammer. But it is just a memory. Your head is quiet. Your humours are, for now, at peace. And in the silent darkness of your cottage, that quiet is the most precious thing in the world. What being arrested was like in the Wild West. The trouble, when it starts, does not come from the barrel of a gun. It comes from a glass of cheap whiskey and the slick, worn face of a playing card. You've been sitting in the lamplight of the Last Chance saloon for what feels like a lifetime, but has probably only been 2 or 3 hours. The air is thick enough to chew, a hearty stew of stale tobacco smoke, sweat, spilled beer, and the cheap perfume clinging to the calico dress of the woman listlessly sweeping the floor. The man playing the piano in the corner seems to have a deep, personal relationship with about 3 songs, 2 of which sound suspiciously alike, and he plays them with a kind of weary resolve. This is the soundtrack to your evening. The low murmur of a dozen conversations, the gentle clink of glasses, the soft rhythmic shuffling of cards. It's a comforting sound usually. It is the sound of a town breathing out after a long day. But tonight, there is a sour note in the melody, and it is sitting directly across the table from you. His name is Silas, and you've known him, or at least known of him, for a while. He has a way of looking at his cards that suggests they have personally offended him. The game is Faro, a fast-paced gamble that has a way of making friends into rivals, and a small stack of coins into an empty pocket with astonishing speed. Faro was the king of saloon games, far more popular than poker in many towns, and notorious for being an easy game for the house or a shifty player to rig. This thought has been clinging to the back of your mind like a burr on a saddle blanket for the last hour. The saloon, you reflect, is the heart and soul of this dusty little town. It's a mainstream fact of life out here that the saloon is often the first and most important public building to go up. It serves as a meeting hall, a courtroom on Circuit Judge Day, an unofficial bank, and a post office. It is the one place where a miner, a cattleman, and a merchant might all find themselves standing side by side. Tonight, it's also serving as your own personal crucible. You draw a card. The whiskey in your glass is the colour of dark tea and has the approximate flavour of liquid fire. It's the kind of stuff you suspect could be used to either power a locomotive in a pinch or dissolve a stubborn rock. It has done its work well. The edges of the room are a little fuzzy, and your sense of sound judgment has taken a short holiday. You think Silas has been pulling from the bottom of the deck. You're not certain, but you're certain enough. You call him on it. Your voice is a little louder than you intend. The murmuring around you dips for a second, then resumes. Silas's eyes narrow. He denies it, of course, his own voice a low growl. The words go back and forth, a clumsy volley of accusation and defence. There is no brilliant, witty repartee. It is the tired, predictable language of two men, softened by alcohol and worn down by pride. Then comes the shove. It's not a punch. Not yet. He leans across the small, rickety table and pushes your shoulder. You rock back in your chair, surprised by the sudden motion. The delicate balance of your inebriation is upset. You push back, clumsy and slow. Your hand knocks over his glass, and the dregs of his whiskey spread across the felt in a dark, sticky stain. That does it. He stands up, kicking his chair back. It scrapes across the floor with a tortured screech. The piano man, bless his dedicated soul, falters for a moment before bravely launching back into his repertoire. You stand up too, your head swimming a little. The two of you look less like fearsome Western brawlers and more like two sacks of feed that have decided to engage in a wobbly, uncoordinated dance. There is a poorly aimed punch, a graceless grapple. The table between you gives up the ghost and topples over with a tremendous crash of splintering wood and clattering glasses. And then, silence. The piano stops. The conversations die. Every eye in the room is on you and Silas, who are now tangled up like yesterday's laundry. And into this sudden, heavy, quiet steps a shadow. The shadow belongs to the town marshal. He didn't burst through the swinging doors. He was already here, nursing a small, sad-looking glass of something at the far end of the bar. He has moved with a silence and economy of motion that is frankly unnerving. He is not a large man, but his presence seems to take up all the available space in the room. His face is weathered, his eyes tired. He has seen this exact scene play out 1,000 times. He does not draw his pistol. He does not raise his voice. He simply looks at you, then at Silas, and lets out a long, disappointed sigh. "All right, boys," he says, his voice flat and low. "That's enough entertainment for one night." Historians still argue whether town marshals were primarily seen as heroic protectors of the common man or as glorified security guards hired by the saloon owners and merchants to protect their property and ensure commerce wasn't too badly disrupted. Watching the way the marshal looks at the broken table first and you second gives you a pretty good idea of where his loyalties lie tonight. Your anger evaporates, replaced by the cold, clarifying splash of adrenaline. Suddenly, you are intensely aware of your dirty shirt, the whiskey on your breath, the dozens of faces watching you. The brief, foolish scuffle is over. Your night of freedom, however, is over as well. The marshal gestures with his chin toward the door. There is no debate, no pleading your case. His authority in this room is as solid and unquestionable as the heavy iron stove sitting cold in the corner. You have disturbed the peace, and now you will be escorted to it. Untangling yourself from Silas is an awkward, undignified process. There's a moment of mutual fumbling, like two dance partners who have forgotten the steps. Silas looks as chagrined as you feel his brief flare of whiskey-fueled bravado now extinguished, leaving only the dull, ashy reality of having made a public fool of himself. The marshal watches this display with the impassive patience of a man observing a natural, if inconvenient phenomenon, like a minor rock slide. He doesn't grab you, he doesn't manhandle you, he just stands there, an obstacle you know you can't go around. "Let's go, boys," he says again, his voice carrying an unmistakable note of finality. "Time for a walk." Stepping out of the saloon is like surfacing from a deep, murky dive. The night air is cool and clean against your hot face. The thick atmosphere of the saloon, that brew of smoke and sweat and spirits, is washed away, and you can smell the dust, the scent of horse and hay from the nearby livery stable, and the cool, earthy perfume of the vast, dark plains that surround your tiny island of civilization. The stars are out, 1 billion of them scattered across the black sky with a kind of wild, careless brilliance that makes your little drunken scuffle seem utterly insignificant. The marshal leads you and Silas not side by side, but in a small, miserable procession. He walks behind you both, not close enough to touch, but close enough that you can hear the soft tread of his worn boots on the dusty street and the gentle jingle of his spurs. It's a sound that seems to punctuate your every step. Jingle, step, jingle, step. The walk of shame, you think, with its own rhythmic accompaniment. The town is quiet now. The few windows that still show a warm, yellow lamplight seem to be watching you, accusingly. A dog barks somewhere in the distance, a lonely, interrogating sound. The street is empty. You pass the dark, silent facade of the general store, its windows like vacant eyes. You pass the blacksmith shop, cold and quiet, the hulking shape of the anvil just visible through the wide doorway. Every familiar landmark feels alien tonight, part of a set for a play in which you have been cast as the fool. About halfway to the marshal's office, he speaks. "All right, hold up a minute." You stop. He steps between you and Silas. From a pouch on his belt, he produces a set of handcuffs. They are not the sleek, clicking cuffs of modern policing. These are heavy, rough things of dark iron, connected by a short, thick chain. A mainstream and starkly physical fact of frontier law enforcement, they were often simply called irons. They look less like a tool of restraint and more like a piece of agricultural equipment. He gestures for your wrists. The iron is cold. It's a real, shocking cold that seems to seep straight into your bones, a physical manifestation of your new status. He claps one cuff around your right wrist. The lock is a simple, heavy mechanism, and he turns a key in it with a decisive thunk. He then cuffs your left hand to Silas's right. Now you are literally tethered to your adversary, a clumsy two-headed beast forged by bad decisions and cheap whiskey. This particular indignity hadn't occurred to you, but now that it's happening, it feels perversely appropriate. A punishment tailored for maximum awkwardness. This is the moment it becomes entirely, irrevocably real. Up until now, it was a disagreement, a bar fight, an incident. Now, with the cold weight on your wrist, it is an arrest. You are officially in the custody of the law. The abstract authority of the marshal has become the concrete reality of this iron chain. You resume your walk, Siam, now hampered by the chain between you. You have to coordinate your steps, a shuffling, graceless dance down the center of the main street. A curtain twitches in a window overhead. Someone is watching. You feel a flush of heat crawl up your neck. Tomorrow, everyone will know. In a town this small, news travels faster than a prairie fire, and your drunken arrest will be the morning's prime topic of gossip over at the diner. It's one thing to have a disagreement. It's another thing entirely to be paraded down the street in irons. You pass a water trough, its surface a perfect still mirror reflecting the starlight. For a brief second, you see your reflection, and Silas's, two slumped figures linked by a chain, followed by the tall, straight silhouette of the marshal. You look like a caricature of justice, a joke with a very slow, very long walk up. You think about your horse, standing peacefully in the livery stable, unaware of his owner's plummeting social status. You think about the small amount of money you have tucked away, and whether it will be enough to pay the fine. The headache that had been quietly gathering at the back of your skull is now beginning to throb in earnest, a painful counter-rhythm to the jingling of the marshal's spurs. Finally, you arrive. The marshal's office and jail are not an imposing stone fortress. Often they were one and the same, and one of the least impressive buildings in town. A quirky or fringe tidbit of frontier architecture is that some of the first jails were just reinforced dugouts or pine box cabins, little more than sheds with bars on the windows. This one is a small, false-fronted clapboard building wedged between the land office and the Assay AA's office. A single oil lamp burns in the front window, casting a lonely circle of light onto the boardwalk. The light says law, but the building itself says temporary. The marshal unlocks the door, and the smell of old wood, stale coffee, and something vaguely like disinfectant wafts out. He nudges you and Silas forward into the gloom. The door closes behind you with a solid, definitive sound, shutting out the stars, the cool night air, and what remains of your dignity. The inside of the marshal's office is a small Spartan affair. A sturdy desk, scarred with the history of countless boot heels and spilled ink, dominates the front of the room. On it sits a neat stack of papers, an inkwell, and the source of the room's lonely light. A hurricane lamp turned down low, its chimney faintly smudged with soot. Wanted posters are tacked to one wall, a gallery of grim-faced men whose crimes make your own saloon scuffle feel like a minor breach of etiquette. It's a somber reminder that while your trouble is small, the world outside contains much bigger and badder wolves. The marshal leads you and Silas past the desk, toward the back of the single room. This is where the office becomes a jail. There are two cells separated from the main room by a wall of thick iron bars that stretch from floor to ceiling. The doors are solid iron with a small barred window in each. This isn't just a shed with bars, it's a proper, if compact, cage. The marshal unlocks one of the cells, the key scraping loudly in the quiet room. The door swings inward with a deep, groaning complaint, the sound of metal that is rarely disturbed. He motions you inside. First, though, he uncuffs you from Silas. The relief of being separated from your former adversary is immediate and profound, but it's quickly replaced by the chill of your new solitary confinement. "You in there," he says, pointing you into one cell. Then he turns to Silas. "And you, in the next one." It's a very simple and effective way to ensure the fight doesn't resume under his roof. He believes in giving feuding parties their own private corners to cool off. The cell door clangs shut behind you. The sound is utterly final. The marshal turns the large key in the lock, another loud metallic clunk that seems to echo in the small space. Through the bars, you watch him do the same for Silas. Then, without another word, he returns to his desk, takes off his hat, and sits down in his creaky chair. He picks up a well-thumbed dime novel, props his feet up on the corner of his desk, and prepares to wait out the night with you. He is not just your jailer, he is your chaperone. You turn and take stock of your new lodgings. The cell is small, perhaps 6 feet deep and 4 feet wide. There is no bed, no chair. Your only furniture is a wooden plank, slightly raised off the floor, which serves as a cot. A single, thin and profoundly unappealing wool blanket is folded neatly upon it. The air is cold and carries the faint, lingering smell of desperation from previous tenants. High up on the back wall is a small barred window, offering not a view but a sliver of the dark night sky. You sit down on the plank. The wood is hard and unyielding. The silence in the cell is immense, broken only by the soft rustle of the marshal turning a page and the sound of your own breathing. This is a very different kind of silence than the one you find on the open prairie. Out there, the silence is alive, full of the hum of insects and the whisper of the wind. This silence is dead. It is the silence of a box. Lying down, you pull the blanket over you. It smells faintly of dust and old sweat and does little to ward off the chill seeping up from the floorboards. The whiskey has entirely worn off now, leaving you with a throbbing headache and a mind that is unpleasantly clear. You stare up into the darkness, and the long, slow work of regret begins. You replay the scene in the saloon, every stupid word, every clumsy motion. Why did you have to say anything? Why couldn't you have just let it go? The cards were worth a few dollars, at most. The price of your freedom, you now realize, is much, much higher. This is the harsh reality of frontier justice. There is often no formal arraignment in the middle of the night, no call to a lawyer. Justice is simple and direct. The marshal is the police, the judge, and the jury for minor infractions like this. His word is law, at least until the circuit judge rides into town, which might not be for another month. Historians know that many towns had laws that were barely written down, existing more as a set of shared understandings enforced by the presence of one man with a badge and the backing of the town's merchants. Your fate rests entirely on his mood come sunrise. Hours crawl by. You can hear Silas shifting in the next cell, coughing softly. He is your companion in misery, a man you were ready to trade punches with an evening ago, and now the only other soul sharing your precise predicament. A strange sort of camaraderie forms in the darkness, a bond forged of mutual stupidity, a bit like being paired for a three-legged race you never signed up for. You try to sleep, but the hard plank, the strange smells and the thrumming in your head make it impossible. Your thoughts drift to the nature of your cell. You remember hearing a quirky tidbit about a town, maybe in Arizona, that built its first jail out of stacked railroad ties because lumber was too scarce. Another story told of a jail that was just a deep pit in the ground. Compared to that, your current pine and iron box feels almost luxurious. Almost. Through the high window, you watch as the sliver of night sky slowly begins to lighten, from inky black to a soft, deep indigo. A rooster crows, its call faint and distant. The world outside is beginning to wake up, utterly indifferent to your confinement. The marshal stirs in his chair. He stands, stretches, and puts a pot of coffee on the small stove in the corner of his office. The smell soon fills the room, rich, dark, and wonderful. It is the smell of freedom, of a new day that you are not yet free to join. The first rays of sun slant through the front window of the office, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. A new day has begun, a day of judgment. You sit up on your plank, running a hand over your unshaven face. You are tired, sore, and profoundly humbled. Your long night in the pine box is over. Now, you just have to face the morning. The smell of brewing coffee acts as a slow, gentle alarm clock. It's a civilized scent in a place that felt anything but civilized last night. The marshal moves with the unhurried rhythm of his morning routine. You hear the scrape of a tin mug on the stovetop, the soft splash of liquid. He doesn't acknowledge you or Silas at first. He's a man who clearly believes that justice, like breakfast, should not be rushed. After enjoying his first cup, he rises from his desk and walks over to the cells. He doesn't open the doors. He just stands there, looking at you through the bars. His face as unreadable as a worn stone. "Morning," he says, the single word hanging in the quiet air. "Hope you boys had a restful night." The gentle sarcasm is as potent as his coffee. You murmur a reply, something non-committal. Silas in the next cell is silent. The marshal sips his coffee. This is your courtroom. A space of a few square feet in front of a cage. And court is now in session. "So," he begins, "reckon you two have had enough time to think about that new table you're going to be buying for the saloon. This is not a question. It is the opening statement of your sentencing. Your crime was not just disturbing the peace, it was the destruction of property. And in a town where a solid wooden table represents a significant investment of labor and capital, that is no small thing. There is no formal plea. There is no jury of your peers. The process is swift, pragmatic, and entirely at the marshal's discretion. This form of justice is a core, mainstream fact of many frontier towns. For petty crimes, drunkenness, brawling, minor theft, the local lawman often had the authority to act as an impromptu magistrate, levying fines on the spot. The goal wasn't rehabilitation, it was restitution and deterrence, and keeping the official court dockets, whenever the circuit judge did arrive, clear of trivial matters. He names a price for the table. It is, you suspect, slightly higher than the table's actual worth, a little inconvenience tax added on for his trouble. He then adds a fine. $5, he says, each for my time. $5 is not a fortune, but it's not nothing either. For a working man, it could be the better part of a week's wages. It's enough to sting. You look over at Silas, who is now standing at his own cell door. He gives a short, sharp nod. There is no point arguing. The verdict is in. The marshal finishes his coffee, then finally fetches the key. He unlocks your cell first. The groan of the hinge sounds different in the daylight. less like a sound of doom and more like a simple mechanical complaint. You step out of the cell, blinking in the relative brightness of the office. Your legs are stiff. Your back aches from the hard plank. You feel grubby and dishevelled. He lets Silas out and the two of you stand there, two chastened pupils in the principal's office. You both reach into your pockets, retrieving your money. You place the crumpled bills and heavy coins on the corner of the marshal's desk. He counts it carefully, then sweeps it into a small wooden box. The transaction is complete. You have paid your debt to society, or at least to the owner of the Last Chance saloon. "All right," the marshal says, turning to his desk and making a small note on a piece of paper. "Get out of here. And if I see you two causing a ruckus again, the fine's gonna be doubled. And you'll spend a week in there helping me clean the place." He jerks a thumb toward the cells. The message is crystal clear. You and Silas walk to the door. Before you leave, he gives one last piece of advice. "And stay out of the Last Chance till supper time. Let folks forget what you look like for a few hours." It's sound advice. Stepping out onto the boardwalk is like being reborn into a world that has moved on without you. The town is fully awake now. The sun is up, wagons are rattling down the street, and people are going about their business. A few of them glance your way. You see a flicker of recognition in their eyes, a glint of amusement. You are yesterday's news, a minor footnote in the town's daily drama. Your walk of shame last night has now become a quiet walk of release, but it feels almost as conspicuous. Your reputation, which may have been perfectly average yesterday, now has a new, slightly tarnished spot on it. A particularly quirky side effect of frontier life was the power of reputation. In a small, interconnected community where everyone knew everyone else, your social standing could be as valuable as currency. Historians debate how quickly reputations could be ruined or repaired, but an arrest for drunken brawling would certainly mark you, at least for a while, as someone prone to poor judgment. You're not an outlaw, but you're no longer just an anonymous face in the crowd. You and Silas stand on the boardwalk for a moment in awkward silence. The shared misery of the night has created a strange, temporary bond. The anger from the card game is gone, burned away by the cold reality of the jail cell. He clears his throat. "Reckon I owe you my half of that table," he says, not looking at you. "Fair's fair." "Reckon so," you reply. Without another word, he turns and walks away down the street, his shoulders slumped. You watch him go, then turn in the opposite direction. Your first stop will be the diner for a cup of coffee that you didn't have to smell through iron bars, and maybe a plate of biscuits and gravy. Then the livery to check on your horse, who remains blessedly ignorant of the entire affair. As you walk, you feel the cool morning air on your face. You feel the weight of the coins no longer in your pocket. The headache is a dull, fading echo. You have been arrested, confined, judged and fined. You have participated in the small, messy turning of the gears of frontier justice, and you have learned a valuable lesson, one that cost you $5, half a table, and a significant portion of your pride. From now on, you'll be a lot more careful about playing cards with a man named Silas, and you will probably be drinking a great deal less of that terrible whiskey, at least for a little while.